Forbes Books presents The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani, highlighting the pioneers that reimagined possibilities and reimagined businesses. We've been all so lucky to be alive during this technology revolution. Most of the time, we take a lot of it for granted. There are the obvious ones like smartphones, Wi-Fi, and Google Maps. But how about something like remote technical services? You know, when you have computer issues, today you can have someone remotely fix it from anywhere in the world without dragging your PC to the repair shop. Well, this week, Gerry and I are happy to welcome Ted Werth, who founded PlumChoice, a company that pioneered the remote technical services business by providing 24/7 online repair and assistance for digital devices. Sounds pretty impressive, right? What's even more impressive was that he pulled it off in 2001. When less than half of the country had access to broadband internet. So we're going to find out how he did it and the role that Gerry played to make Ted's dream a reality. Ted, welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
And Ted, this podcast has acted as a bit of a reunion show for Gerry because we're reuniting his old friends that he's worked with for many, many years. So if you could take us back to the early 2000s when you guys were young kids, wet behind the ears, trying to become stars in the digital technology space. What brought you two together when you first started out?
Well, first of all, glad to hear I'm among your past friends there, Gerry. Happy to be here and
Nice
share
to
a
have
little
you
bit
here.
about our time together. So I actually started a company called PlumChoice at the very beginning of 2000, literally right after 9/11 occurred. And this business was for computer services delivered remotely to the home. Zip forward a couple of years to when I met Gerry, I was at a transition point where everything we used for our platform, for capture of data and so forth, was no longer suitable for the company. We're looking for a way to grow. And that's where Gerry's team came in, was recommended by another CEO of another startup in the Boston area. And with Gerry's help on the platform side, we grew to be about 800 technicians nationwide doing our service.
Wow. And, you know, having these conversations with leaders like yourself, Ted, I understand that digital transformation is very difficult in 2023. I can't even imagine how hard digital transformation was in the early 2000s. Can you take us through how difficult that was back then?
Yeah, it's funny because as I was thinking about for this discussion, back where things came from, when I started PlumChoice, about 40% of homes had broadband. And this is a company that worked by broadband. And my first challenge was my own home where I could not get access to the broadband. And finally, the only way I could do was I got a big parabolic antenna and I pointed at my neighbor across the street's house because he did have high-speed internet. And I was able to pick up his wireless network remotely to start off the business.
Gerry, have you started a lot of business like that with partners stealing Wi-Fi? Is that part of your past, Gerry?
I'm sure he was not stealing Wi-Fi from his neighbor, but it shows you, Ted. This is typical Ted. How can we find a solution in a different way, thinking in different ways to a problem, and using technology to address that? That's how it used to be back in those days. How can we think about problems in different ways? How can we address them in different ways? And it was very challenging because imagine providing remote computer support through an internet connection back in those days. That wasn't obvious. I mean, now everybody is like, oh, let's zoom in and let's do this and that. But back in those days, it was quite something to have this kind of a communication, to connect remotely, to even convince people that you're not gonna steal their data from the computer, and then you're trustworthy, and all of these things are happening using a very structured process and a very properly thought out method. Really, it was quite forward thinking when Ted did this with PlumChoice, and this is one of the reasons I wanted him on the podcast, because it was quite something to see him thinking about, okay, well, technology enables us to do this, well, then let's do it.
I'll tell you, Gerry, you're absolutely right. I remember we were trying to put together advertising campaigns And we couldn't go out and advertise remote support because people did not know what that was. So all we could do is advertise support, and then when we got them on the phone, we tell them, "This is why you want to use us." And that's how the business started. It was just a compelling difference for how the services went out to the consumers.
And so you were a B2B or B2C company when you started?
So we started as B2C and advertised in local papers and tried to pick up people that had that 40% internet. But despite that, we still fixed a lot of computers through the old dial-up computers, if
Wow.
you can imagine. The big transformation is if you've ever had to have something fixed and you have to call one of those big service organizations, they give you a 4 hour window, 3 days or a week away. And that's what we were competing with. They would call and we'd say, okay, we can be there in just a few minutes
Hmm.
and we will help you. It'll be quicker and it'll be a lot lower cost because we didn't have to take time.
And what was the competition like in this space when you're dealing with only 40% of the population? Were there a lot of people offering this, or was it something where it was just so hard for it to even be an option for people?
Yeah, there was nobody that provided what we provided when we started. I would say that we were literally the first ones to provide it, which is why customer education was such a tough part of it. Just convincing them this could be done this way. And as Gerry said, is it secure? What's it like having someone come into my computer? I can't necessarily see them. I don't know what they're doing. They could be stealing my stuff. Our response was always, well, you have someone physical coming into your home who you don't know. They're sitting there for hours. What do you think they're doing? Or what could they do? So,
Wow. It's so crazy. And how do you scale a company like this? Because if you're having this much trouble communicating to consumers what you do, how do you communicate this to investors or folks who want to get involved with the company? Because at that time, they were at the same basic level as your consumers in knowing what the power of your technology was.
yeah, from an investor side, we couldn't right away. It really was a bootstrapped operation. We had to grow it organically, which means went out, advertised, grabbed customers, built a business on the back of advertising dollars, and keep it profitable until the point that we could. And we had to grow for a while, had to grow to the point that we could get a big company that was interested in working with us. And that's when we really did a hockey stick of growth, is once we could bring in Circuit City, we grew very, very rapidly. We could show the model, we could show the benefits, and we were able to get investment dollars.
And Gerry, did you see a future in what Ted was trying to do here? Because again, this all feels like a period piece. You know how like Downton Abbey takes place in the early 1900s, and it's people horse and buggy, and parents. People are having dinner by the candlelight. Like this, all you're talking about just seems like it's another time. Yet it's only 20 something years ago. Gerry, 20 years ago, could you see this as possibility, or were you thinking this Ted? This I don't know what Ted's smoking up there in Boston. He's got, maybe there's something going on with the colleges that he's maybe getting a contact high or something. But did you see a future in what Ted was doing?
Well, this is part of why I decided to go into businesses to do exactly this, to work for customers that would challenge you and would push you, would expand your horizons, would bring you into new spaces. I love doing this. I totally love doing this. It's why my company is where it is today is because we've been privileged to work. I mean, look, you have today Zoom because this space have been created by people like Ted. I mean, Ted was there first and opened up this entire remote computing help. And I remember the tools we used then. It was totally new, and this is creating a space. Advertising in the newspaper to provide remote computer support is quite something. You had to start somewhere. You had to create the space. You had to create the market. And for me, seeing that happening, and back in those days, I haven't even completely fully grasped and realized what was happening and how transformational was that. I didn't really completely realize, but I knew it was interesting and I knew it was challenging us in the right way. So I was totally inspired by this entire way of evolving and transforming this industry, the space, and the way we would interact with Ted's team and the technology that he needed to support this entire transformational process.
I'll say, Gerry, you're just being a little bit modest here. When we first met, I had a big need, which was to figure out how to manage a growing workforce, a very large customer base, and bring all this information together into a platform. And it was a unique set of skills on your part, combined with what we were doing that created a completely different platform for delivery of service. And it was, I don't want to overuse the word transformational, but with all the information we had, the future of the business was trying to figure out how do you get all the information that you can get and then use it to improve the business processes going forward. It was a many, many year process. We probably worked together for 13 years um, in just continuing to evolve and grow this mission.
And stepping back a second, talking about your growing pains, looking back now, what was harder, marketing the company or building the technology for it to actually happen?
I always think customers are the best and toughest part of anything. There's very few businesses that get more customers than they want. And as many times as we almost went out of business because we couldn't get enough business or money or something, we never almost went out of business because of the technology.
Wow.
The technology was really an enablement.
You are creating a space, basically, a new space, a new area. I mean, I cannot even imagine how difficult it was to kind of convince the market that you were the right thing for them.
And something for the kids, Ted. This is years before cloud computing was even like on anyone's mind. What kind of hardware are we dealing with here? Because everything's all hardware and landlines and broadband lines. I mean, what were you dealing with to build that company?
So actually, one of the benefits, and the one that I realized when I founded the company, was the ability to take a technician, someone who knew how to go out to the homes and fix computers, and give them the ability to fix it from their own home. And in business, as you're growing, everything's about time and money. You never have enough time, you never have enough money. And technicians before PlumChoice would maybe be able to do 3, 4 visits a day. Be travel time, having to sit down, work on a computer, sit there and watch it do its thing. When you can connect from home, there's no drive time. And when the computers are doing virus scans and all these other things, the technician can go and work on another computer. And so they could work on 20 different computers in a day, making them far more efficient, much better job satisfaction. We can offer a lower cost service and make a lot more money. The building of the company largely was because we could create that efficiency in the workforce.
And when did you launched a company in 01? When did the customers catch up to the technology? You said 40% of people had broadband in 01. How long before you got this massive coverage where we are today, or not even, or maybe close to where we are today, in terms of being able to have the customers who could use something like a PlumChoice?
I think that we grew as fast as we could into the situation. So, this was a whole transformation in the industry. Everyone's home was being wired. It was moving quickly. Where we had to, we actually did service over dial-up. It was slower, but it still was more efficient. So we weren't held back other than the communications and ultimate efficiency of the workforce. So, and the 40% grew very, very rapidly. I would have to go back and look at what those charts look like to be able to answer that fully.
But still remarkable stuff. And then I believe PlumChoice was acquired by some pretty big company later on, right?
Yeah, it was acquired by a insurance company. Believe it or not, it was Allstate. It was an insurance company because this was an insurance company that had parts of its business that fixed computers, and rather than have them sent back and so forth, they could fix it all remotely, and it reduced their insurance costs.
Wow. I mean, I know you couldn't see into the future when you were starting the company, but you saw where things were heading, where more people were going to have access to the internet. But did you think that one day the company would be acquired by an insurance I mean, in the realm of possibilities I mean, this is days before acquisitions and selling to a big company were not really something most people thought about. But like looking back at it now, you're like, what? What? How would an insurance company play a role in this?
Yeah, I have to say that that's an outcome I would have never predicted if you'd asked me for my top 100 companies to do an acquisition. But as an entrepreneur, and I know Gerry can appreciate this, you always think you're going to grow the company to be a $1 trillion business, and all your focus is always on trying to get that going. There was all sorts of potential acquirers. Insurance was not my first.
And speaking of digital transformation, so how do you transform this company that ended up being gigantic, being acquired by a huge insurance company? What did you do internally? We talked about the hardware, and we talked about where the customers actually caught up in terms of being able to have this internet access. How did you build this team? Because in a way, the technology was transforming as people were transforming. So how did you
That's
connect
right.
the dots there?
Yeah, and I'm going to say I was lucky. You ask about businesses. I was lucky that the workforce I was trying to deploy were technicians, and what better group of people to build their ability to work from home than technicians?
Mm.
If we had been building another type of business, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. It would have been far more difficult. Um, Working from home is a natural comfort zone for technicians. They love it. We could source anywhere in the country for our labor, people to do the servicing. So there was no restrictions in geography. When we had to offer Spanish, we were able to go offshore and acquire people offshore. So the model itself just was perfect for growing, and the people that we hired were perfect in this role. So I don't think we could have done it had we gone after some sort of a market, administrative or otherwise, where they would have had to have a very different skill set. But they had powerful computers, they had internet, they had everything they needed at home because that was their livelihood.
And Gerry, could you see where Ted was heading with this? As you said, you're always looking for something new, improving the lives of others. But over the span of over 10 plus years, you guys worked together. Could you see that this was where it was heading, where everyone was going to have the internet and everyone would be accessing everyone else's computers? I mean, was that even an even idea that you were even thinking that was going to be a possibility?
I was totally convinced it is going to happen. I mean, I've been sold on this idea from the beginning. It was the future. I mean, if you would read the research, and if you would read what people were discussing about, especially in our space, it was just a matter of time until we would end up where we are today. What I didn't realize is, and I was talking to Ted about this just an hour ago, is that with so much access, there is also some downside in the way internet is being used and social media, no filters, enabling also bad stuff, not just good stuff. We were very idealistic back then. We were thinking that, oh my God, this information is going to get to your fingertips so fast, and this is going to transform our world, and you're going to have a so much better place, and educated people, people that are very smart and everything. We've had a lot of progress, but still is falling short of what my dreams were back in those days. And but yeah, this is a long way to say that yes, I've been dreaming about this future since back then, and I was counting on this to happen.
We were very lucky. The issues that Jerry's talking about are so front and center today. We were not thinking about those. Our big issues were all about security of our customers, and so it's a smaller smaller set of problems, much more contained. It was all we did 100% recording, believe it or not, of everything said to a customer, everything done to a computer. So we had the ability to assure complete security when we did those types of services. Boy, if I had been able to think about what was going to happen in the future, I'm sure we would have seen more issues back then.
And let's kind of connect the dot bomb era and where we're living now. So you started this company, like we mentioned, early 2000s in the wake of the dot bomb. And now leaders are kind of preparing themselves for a recession, a bearish market. Do you see some similarities there in terms of digital transformation then and now, in terms of mindset and how you get through the rough times?
Yeah, let me think about let me think about that one for a second. That's a really good question, Joe. Jerry?
Yeah.
Well, I can give you
Put your hand up. I have
one.
to think about that one.
I can give you one pointer here for sure. One thing is that I'm seeing that is very much alike is this hype curve. Like everything is overblown, overvalued. Just because you're in the tech space, the valuations are to the sky. Everybody is hiring like crazy, is headhunting like crazy. We are blowing up the market, and then there is a deflation coming. Then there is let's come back. Let's go back to the earth. Let's find the common sense again. That's a little bit of that. It's not as big as it was in the dot-com era, but there is a little bit of that. I mean, everybody is rushing into buying bitcoins just because it's cool, or because he read somewhere on the internet that is the greatest thing after sliced bread. There is no palpable use case that will actually create value somewhere in the economy, but we are buying it. We are buying it like crazy. We go from one Bitcoin that was $100 to $20,000. Where is the value? Where is the value created? What is behind it? What is it's like we are behaving like ships, like this kind of craziness, irrational way of just jumping forward. And this was very much the case back in the dot-com era. And I think this same pattern repeats, maybe at a lower scale, and it's a little bit more controlled, but you see the same patterns. At least I see those. I mean, Ted, don't you?
Yeah, no, actually, I was trying to think about some of the, besides the financial side, some of the big changes in technology that are coming. What really grew Plum Choice was the introduction of high-speed internet. And there are some trends coming on right now that are going to drive a lot more transformation. A lot of the technology companies got a little forward on their skis. We're seeing that adjustment that Gerry was talking about. Now looking at introduction of pervasive 5G, AI, there's going to be some really big changes, just as transformational as what we saw in that era.
AI will be exciting, and it's going to transform the way we work, the way we interact with technology. And 5G is going to be, I mean, broadband everywhere, really, at a capacity that we haven't seen before. Again, I mean, I have this idealistic side of me who's dreaming about all the good stuff that you can do, but I don't even want to think about all the bad things that you could do, manipulating people with AI. Like I'm closing my eyes and I don't want to see that future.
I think Jerry's a little bit nervous on the kids' side and what they're going to be facing in the future. I I see. I tend to be very optimistic about some of this technology and where things are going. And there's no question that technology is going to enable the distribution of capability and services to people that could never have them before. And as Jerry said, through 5G, it's going to be everywhere. High speed services. Now, people who could never afford them are going to be able to get access to healthcare, to treatments that are very beneficial and only able to be done because of, again, other technologies like AI, which take those capabilities out. So I tend to be very optimistic on that side, very pessimistic on the impact of society. But anyway, it's a yin and yang thing.
And you've had such an amazing career, Ted. I mean, I think you were a nominee for Ernst& Young Entrepreneur of the Year. You basically created the category of premium technical services. Do you look back and be like, shouldn't I be owning an island now? Shouldn't I be have a net worth of like $100 billion for what I did? Or are you just like, hey, I'm happy with what I have? Because I feel like guys like you are kind of like the people who, like, Thomas Edison stole the light bulb idea from. Like there's guys like you in history that have had such an impact, but we just don't know the name. Ted Werth's not a household name,
Yeah, that's okay. I actually I feel very good about the years. It was actually a lot of relationships that were built in that time frame. You're right. I don't own an island. Um, Maybe I do want one now with everything Gerry's describing. But I think there are so many opportunities that I still look into doing. I'm always forward looking. What am I going to be doing? There are some great opportunities to get involved with companies that want to transform but don't necessarily know how. Now I can finally put on my gray hair hat and say, I've got some experience that I can bring to the table rather than learning it all for the first time.
And I'm curious, in 2001, do you sort of look back and like have the older guys who are like, man, you don't understand what we're trying to do here. And now fast forward 25 years later, you're the old guy telling the kids. Do you think about that? Like, man, I should have been nice to some of those old
I think
timers back then.
Yeah, Joe, I think about that all the time. I can't tell you how many meetings. Back then, it was okay to say, I've got the gray hair in the room, pay attention to me, whether it's from managers or investors or otherwise. And I absolutely appreciate what I know now. But I also think there was a huge fun in just learning and doing this myself along the way. And when I say myself, I'm talking about what I did on the Plum Choice side. There was a lot of people involved, but that's the personal side.
I think Ted is the person for which this saying that age is just a number applies because is definitely this old guy, gray hair doesn't apply to him.
Hmm.
Like the way he thinks and process information, everything. I mean, I know very young people that are really not there. It's about how he imagines the future, he imagines things, technologies, new ways of doing things, new ways. He's pretty restless from this point of view. So I think that's uh,
You're
that's
much too
very much
kind,
you,
Gerry.
Ted. Yeah, I never had a conversation with Ted where he didn't come up with something. Hey, did you see this? Did you see that? How cool is this? It was, it's pretty good.
And now, Ted, as you work with younger entrepreneurs, folks who are in your position that you were 25 years ago, do you subscribe to the adage that youth is wasted on the young? That it's like, man, if I had their energy that that these kids have now, would I be able to do
I do. I absolutely do. Whether I have to sleep longer at night or something, I can't.
more
I don't
bathroom trips?
have. Okay,
Yeah.
we don't have to go there, but no, I think there is a place for everyone in their stage of life, and there's times to invest your time, and as Gerry is even right now, going through raising a family, and now I have grandkids, and things are starting to go in that regards. I'm just trying to find where my passion's going to be at every step. Where do I want to spend my time? I love helping small companies. I do work at MIT Venture Mentor Service, helping a lot of deep tech companies at Northeastern with their, wireless and Internet of Things. Um, and it's just so great to see the ideas coming out of research that will have tremendous impact going forward. And they need a business hand. They need someone who can help gray hair to try to help accelerate things. And I get a lot of fun out of doing that.
And I always like to say something nice about Gerry because I make fun of him a lot. So tell me about the impact that Gerry's had on Plum Choice and or you as a person.
I'm going to say it was at all levels. We hit, and not to go back to the old days, but we had an off the shelf product. We hit a wall. We knew we did hit a wall. We didn't know exactly how to solve it. So, you know, Gerry had a company that he had just founded that solved those types of problems. Technically, he made it happen on the technical side. Gerry was an investor. I don't know if Gerry remembers that,
Yeah.
but Gerry was an investor in PlumChoice, and that shows a huge commitment. And then personally, Gerry and I hung out. He was talking about, he knew my kids when they were young because that was the way things worked. And when you were trying to get a lot of things done, and Gerry was visiting, we would spend a lot of time together. So there's a personal interaction as well. And so, I greatly appreciate the impact that had on the success of PlumChoice and then me personally.
Good times. Good
It
times.
was terrific.
That's
We
awesome.
learned a lot. We learned a lot. We changed a lot. We matured a lot. It was amazing. And it's, like this is why also I wanted to write a book, to share, to push people to dream, to push people to imagine the possibilities like that technology brings to you. And I'm still puzzled how come in 21st century there are companies that are still going bankrupt because they haven't used it properly. They haven't addressed this transformation in a timely manner. They are behind the curve, whatever. So I mean, like, what's happening to you? Like, wake up and start dreaming, start thinking, start imagining all the possibilities. There are so many things to be done. And yeah, there are some are not doing it. And somehow I want to inspire them to just to just think about the issues in a different way, think about the business processes in a different way.
Hmm. And Ted, you talk about mentorship and how you help folks over at MIT. Uh, Lastly, the future of digital transformation. When you have people come to you and you talk about, the first things first is like building a company, scaling a company, but then eventually everyone has to transform. It's the old adapt or die Moneyball idiom. What do you tell those young entrepreneurs about to have this mindset of being open and willing and seeing the future and being able to transform your company?
So that is actually one of the toughest aspects of working with researchers and people that are really brilliant on the technology side. They understand the technology. They like to go to technology. It's like the hammer and the nail. Every solution is a hammer. They learn or they don't move forward. That there's a business component. There's a customer. They have to understand that customer so that they can modify what they're thinking and make it work for customers. And so that transformation is almost a personal transformation, or they have to bring in the right people to make it happen. That's usually the biggest transformation that I see at the level that I'm helping people at MIT and Northeastern.
It's always like you have to reinvent yourself every year or every couple of years because it is required from you something else. You need to, your job description is continuously evolving as an entrepreneur. As the company grows, it's no longer the same thing that you need to address. And people don't really get it all the time that this is actually something that they will need to do, they will need to transform. They will need to change to adapt to their new position, to the new role in the company as the company grows, and it's very difficult. I've seen many entrepreneurs just failing because they don't grasp the fact that they need to be a different person 2 years from now, or they need to move away and let someone else manage it. It's very challenging to see how the companies evolve and the entrepreneurs evolve with them.
And Ted, when it comes to digital transformation, it's like who are you going to call Ghostbusters, but who are you going to call? It's probably going to be someone like Gerry, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Ted, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. And I kind of wish you did have that island because we'd be doing this podcast on an island somewhere, sipping drinks with umbrellas out of it. But it seems like you turned out pretty good, Ted. You got a great family. You're helping entrepreneurs today. So thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, Gerry. I do appreciate it.
This has been The Great Digital Transformation with Gerard Zatvani. To participate in the conversation, go to gerardzatvani.com. The Great Digital Transformation is a production of Forbes Books.